Hey guys, thanks for joining me here. Welcome back to Good Life Farm. My name is Constance, and this is the week 10 garden tour of 2021. If you are brand new here and just finding the channel, we are located in northern Alabama, Garden Zone 7B, and I have two gardens here on our property. This particular garden is my in-ground, no-till, no-dig garden. I do have a few raised beds out here, but this is mostly no-till. Out in front of the house, we have another garden area, and that one is primarily raised beds. Out there, I've got lots of edibles, I've got lots of flowers, I've got blueberries, and all sorts of good stuff. So now today I'm sharing the garden tour, but I also have a few other updates to give along the way as well. Before I go any further, I did want to share something that I received in the mail today. So this harvest basket was made by a gentleman named Kent. He and his wife are subscribers. Hello, Kent and Mrs. Kent. And they live here in Alabama, not too terribly far away. And Kent makes these baskets. Oh, it's made out of cedar. I love the smell of wood, and I just wanted to say thank you. Kent makes these baskets out of cedar. He also makes them out of cypress, and he does have an Etsy shop. They didn't sponsor this or anything like that. I just wanted to give him a little shout out as a thank you for the basket. So if you are interested in these, I will put a link down below to Kent's Etsy shop. So now we have had so much rain over the past couple weeks. Yesterday was the first day I was really able to get out here and do major work. I got a lot of the stuff out here weeded because, of course, when you can't get out and maintain, the weeds are going to go crazy when you have a bunch of rain. So I have two very long beds. I got those mostly weeded. I have another long bed that's about 3/4 of the length of these two long ones. So this area right in here, the weeds were just kind of out of control, and so I slid some cardboard up underneath the vines to try and help suppress those. It won't be 100%, but it'll definitely get it to where they're not going to completely swallow up all of these sweet potatoes. So you can see these are the Beauregard, the classic orange sweet potatoes. They're doing really well. I actually saw my first flowers this week. You can see a couple there that are closed up. Sweet potatoes are related to morning glories, and they only open up in the morning. This right here, coming up the trellis, is my Kajari melons. I've got lots of blossoms, and I have the beginnings of a couple melons on here, so that is exciting to see. Last year is the first year I grew Kajari melons, and I absolutely loved them, so I'm growing some again this year. Over in here I've got lots of volunteer zinnias. I did not plant any of these. Last year I had so many of them that they just kind of took over everything, and so this year I was a little bit more strategic about which volunteers I let remain. So I've got these lovely pink ones right here, just kind of a very pretty variety of pinks. You got some that are a little more bold, some that are more like blush. These over here are some white zinnias, and I've got this big, beautiful one that came up in here, tucked in underneath the pineapple sage. Now from the little walkway there, going all down through here, I've got a variety of different peppers and a random okra plant, another volunteer in the garden. I always find the volunteers to be kind of fun, and I often let them, not all of them, but I often let a lot of them just kind of do their thing. And then back there on the trellis, I have a variety of different kinds of tomatoes. These right here are Hungarian hearts. I've got some Dr. Weish, some Florida 91s, Bella Rosas, and a few different others. Now, right here behind me, you see one of my bean trellises. I have been harvesting beans like crazy. I have filled up a large space in one of my freezers with beans. I have canned batches of beans, so I've got them jarred up in the pantry. Actually, this morning I had a video that went up all about canning green beans. And while I've still been coming out here and harvesting, the numbers have significantly dropped to where I'm coming out and just finding a handful at a time of good beans. And so yesterday, while I was out here doing all of that catch up with the garden, I made a decision. Started ripping them out. And I've got a great big pile. Now, it was difficult. It was difficult making that decision because this trellis right here that was over the walkway between these two beds was just, it was my favorite spot in the garden. I mean, it was just so peaceful. I loved it. However, we are currently in the middle of July, and if I clear that out, clean it up, I can start a whole second round of beans, and I should be able to harvest them, say, end of August, middle of September, somewhere in there. And that will give me a whole nother round of beans that I can preserve for the coming year. And that will be long before our first frost. So it was kind of hard emotionally, just tearing out that beautiful spot in the garden. But ultimately, I know it's the right decision, and I will be tearing out the other one as well. So beautiful, but time to start it again. And while I'm over here, I just have to show you this amazing cluster of tomatoes. Isn't this beautiful? These are Abe Lincoln tomatoes, a new variety for me. I'm growing several varieties for the first time this year, and this is one of them, and that's just a sight of beauty. Now, over here in my squashed bed, this is one of my raised beds that's out here, I'm still getting lots of zucchini. Pretty much every day I'm coming out here and harvesting zucchini. And I've had people ask me what variety of zucchini is the one that produces the best for me. And it has always been Ford Hook. It has always been my best producing variety year over year. Whether it was in ground, in the raised bed, or what have you. It's always done the best for me. Now, one of the experiments this year was Zucchinia rampicante. Zucchinia rampicante. You can harvest it while it's young and green and tender, and use it just like zucchini or squash. You know, you can saute it or what have you. Or you can allow it to fully mature on the vine, in which case it becomes like butternut squash. Well, I've got one I think is going to be getting harvested this week, and y'all get a load of this. This thing is humongous. Humongous. So, this will be like butternut squash, a lot of butternut squash, I think. So I'm gonna have to figure out exactly what to do with this. And I have another one over on the other side, almost as big as that. So this is the Ford Hook zucchini. That is the favorite that I grow every year. And then this was the, I believe it's called Golden Delight. If it wasn't called Golden Delight, I'll put the name of it down here on the screen. This is the one that I was not impressed with. It is a zucchini, but this is only, I think this is only the third one I've gotten. Whereas I have lost count as how many Ford hooks I've gotten this year. Now over here on the end of the garden bed, and I know it's silhouetted at the moment, I have Mongolian giant sunflowers. I absolutely love growing Mongolian giants. The tall one on the left for you is approximately 12 feet tall. The one next to it is, you know, maybe about 8 feet tall or so. But there's something I noticed that I wanted to share with you. So many of you are aware that when you are growing a garden and you have the blossoms, you can have something called a fasciated blossom. That's where two or more blossoms have actually fused together, and if you let them grow, often it will create cat-faced or just mangled tomatoes or peppers. I've seen fasciated squash. Just about anything that comes from a blossom can do that. And interestingly enough, I actually found two fasciated blossoms in the garden this year. The sunflowers. Not the super tall one, but the one right next to it, the 8-footer. It's actually a fasciated sunflower, and I have another one over here on the end. So I will try and get up there close enough to where you can see it. But it is actually two sunflowers growing out of the same head. Hi, buddy. So right down here in the walkway, I have a couple volunteer Persian carpet zinnias, and these are very small little zinnias. Generally they're warm colors, oranges and yellows with hints of red, and they come in all sorts of patterns. These have been volunteers for me for 2 years in a row. I planted them 3 years ago out here in the garden. Over here in the middle of my Tulsi basil patch, here there are some more of these Persian carpet zinnias. You can see they have a slightly different pattern than the other ones. These are more of a yellow and rust color. So I love the variety that comes in those. These are crimson coneflowers. They are a type of echinacea. People usually see them in purples, like this right here. This is actually out of the same plant, but got a little bit of color variation. Those right over there are Denver daisies, and they actually have another name as well. I just don't remember what it is. But both the Denver daisy and the coneflower are perennials that come back every year. Right down in here, I've got some more volunteer zinnias. I also have some angel-faced snapdragons, another perennial. Most of the flowers that I plant in the garden are perennials of some sort, whether they grow back from the root system or they are self-seeders like the zinnias are. However, the one flower that I planted out here that I do have slight regrets on, at least as far as where it is, not that I planted it, is this yarrow, which has kind of begun going to seed. This stuff goes crazy. Most of the yarrow that I have planted here is the white yarrow, although down in there you can kind of see I have a little bit of the pastel pink yarrow as well. I will actually be coming out here this winter and digging out as much of this as I can and starting a yarrow patch in its own its own bed, because I have found yarrow coming up in the walkway all the way over here by this bed, and yeah, I heard about how invasive it could be after I planted it. Over here on the end, I've got some more of the crimson coneflowers and a bumblebee. So we are actually past sunset at this point, and the bees are starting to go to sleep. So you'll see them tucked here and there in different spots. This lilac behind me, it's called a Texas lilac. It's more like a butterfly bush than your typical big lilac that you would think of. It is very fragrant, not as fragrant as your classic lilac. However, it is an excellent way to bring in the pollinators because it flowers all summer long. Alright, so right here behind me on the porch, you can see my pitiful green stalk. So last year was the first year that I used this, that I had gotten it, and I had it out in the middle of the yard. And you know, it being northern Alabama, it gets really, really hot here. And I just felt like it wasn't getting enough water. Maybe it was too much sun, being complete full sun all day long. And so I decided to put it here on the porch because it still gets sun all afternoon, but it's at least partly shaded. And so I felt like this might be a better option. I put it on a base that rotates. However, and pardon me, it is 92 degrees, high humidity, and a heat index of over 100 today, so it's warm. So like I said, I put it on a base so that I could rotate it every day so that all of the plants would get sun. And it worked at first, but the base that I had bought to rotate isn't actually made for this much weight, and after about 2 weeks or so, it cracked and I couldn't move it anymore. And so the things that were kind of getting sun and rain, and I watered it, were doing okay, but then after a while it just didn't. So I do think it being on the porch here was the right location for it. However, I need to get the base that Greenstock actually makes for these because it's designed to handle that kind of weight. So I'm not giving up on my Greenstock. I am going to try it again next year, but I'll use their base. So yeah. Out here in the raised bed garden, everything for the most part is looking beautiful. I've got tomatoes everywhere. These Dr. Weish tomatoes. These Dr. Weish tomatoes here are getting some size to them. Look at all of these beauties in here. Here you see the Blue Beauty tomatoes, and where they're getting the most sun, they have that beautiful purple color. Over here we have some Black Vernissage tomatoes, which are your saladette-sized tomato, bigger than a cherry tomato, but not quite a slicer. These are Double Dutch Cosmos. Some of the few flowers that I actually planted this year. I didn't plant very many just because I've had so many volunteers the past couple years, especially last year. And these kind of come in a variety of color as well. Variations of pink and blush. So down here in the bed I've got all sorts of peppers, and they're all doing great so far. But up on the trellis is what I wanted to show you. This is the Chinese python bean. It is one of my experiments this year. I always like to try something new. And Let me redirect this guy up off of my peppers and back up onto the trellis. And I wanted to show you the blossoms, but it looks like most of them are actually closed. I did get a photo of one that I snapped with my phone the other day though, and let me show you it here. All right, this trellis over here is looking great. This bed here, the sage down there is a plant, well, is a portion of the sage that I had tried to transplant and save. I don't know if that will make it, and I am kind of leaning towards that whole root rot thing, since sage does like a dry climate. And this may make it, maybe not. But I do have another section over here that is looking fantastic. So I think we're going to be okay with the sage, even though I lost the vast majority of it. But over in here, I've got a whole bunch of different kinds of tomatoes. I've got Old German, I've got pear tomatoes, just a bunch of different varieties. So that is the bed that I grew my peppers in last year. You know, I put that one in back in the spring. However, this is the newest one that I put in, along with my red raspberries back there, one of the raised beds in the other garden, and my little beds down here with the loofah gourds. And that is what I wanted to talk about. So I've had a lot of questions about the soil that was in those other raised beds, the ones that were not doing well, that I put in this year. And I feel like there's a bug in my hair. So in case you had missed that, the short version is I had put in several new beds. I used bagged organic soil, a type that I had used in the past, didn't have a problem with it. That's what I filled that last year's pepper bed with. I have that bed over there with this year's peppers and cosmos, and those are doing great as well. But then this year, when I built the new beds, this soil was depleted. It was terrible. I sent a sample off to the laboratory to get it tested, got the results back this week, and it was even worse than I had thought. I'll put a link up in a card or down below if you would like to see the test results that I got back. But I wanted to give a little bit of a follow-up. Now, a lot of people were wanting to know what brand of soil this was. I will tell you what brand of soil it is. However, I'm not going to tell you to avoid it necessarily. Like I said, I have used this soil in the past. I had no problems with it. All of my plants did wonderful in those beds that I had filled with that particular soil. Now, that said, the brand that I got was Kellogg brand organic raised bed soil, and it was supposed to have been you know, like amended with, you know, all sorts of wonderful things so that it was nutrient rich and ready to go. And last year's clearly was, but as the lab results showed, this year's was not. And I did reach out to the company. I let them know what was going on with the soil, how it had it tested and everything. And to their credit, they did not just blow me off. You know, they didn't just say, oh, you know, hey, sorry to hear that, you know, whatever. They didn't give me a form letter. I have actually been having an ongoing conversation with someone from the company. They are actually very disturbed about the situation with the soil, and they are actually trying to figure out what happened, because it shouldn't be that way. So while this year's soil that I got wasn't good, you know, I have been doing what I could to try and save those plants, and you can see the tomatoes back there. I mean, they're kind of growing. I don't expect to get anywhere near the yield that I would have had we started off, you know, right off the bat in a good condition. But I'm sure I'll be able to harvest at least something out of those. So it's not a total loss. I mean, the beds are still filled, and once this growing season is done, I will simply amend it with lots of good stuff, compost and things like that. You know, you can save potting soil from old pots And so if you can save potting soil from old pots by amending and giving it new life, you can do the same thing with raised beds. So it's not a total loss. It's just going to take a little bit of work and, you know, maybe a little more than it normally would. So it's not the end of the world. Now, I did have one other announcement that I wanted to share, but let's walk out to the greenhouse for that. So, as I said earlier, I have been doing a lot of canning. I have started doing a lot of canning for the year. So as I said earlier, canning season has begun. One of the next things I'm going to be canning is some black and blue jelly, and I will share that video with all of you. Well, I will film it and then share the video with all of you. That particular jelly recipe I will be using my steam canner with. A steam canner is a lightweight alternative to using a hot water bath canner. It is a great method and safe method for canning high acid foods like jellies and salsas and things like that. It's not a substitute for low acid foods that must be pressure canned, but it is a really fun and easy way to do high acid food canning. And so I will be using my steam canner to can that jelly. And what I wanted to share with you is, you know, from time to time I like to do a giveaway as a way to just kind of give back and say thank you to all of you who chose to hit that subscribe button and spend a little bit of your day with me here at the homestead. So I am offering a giveaway for your very own steam canner. Exactly the same kind that I have, same brand and everything. And there will also be some goodies tucked inside the canner when the winner receives it. And this giveaway is open to anybody, no matter where you live. Because I'm not having this shipped, I already have it in my possession and I will be shipping it myself. So all you have to do to enter the giveaway is leave a comment on YouTube under this video, because I will use a random comment selector tool to pick the winner. And so all of your entries, all of the comments need to be here on the YouTube channel, not on my website. I know some people will watch it over there, but if you want to enter the giveaway, leave your comment on the YouTube channel. And all you have to do is leave that comment, say enter me, and tell me what you would maybe like to can in it. So that is it. Thanks for hanging out with me here again at A Good Life Farm. I will talk to y'all next time.